Brian, you've described the three legs of the stool in B2B commerce: the company's traditional B2B business, their own e-commerce business, and their customers' e-commerce business. Let's first discuss supporting the first leg of the stool, the B2B company's traditional business. In the past, B2B companies used their traditional distribution center as their primary logistic format. Now, many of them are shipping directly to the consumer. Tell us more about some of the multi-channel logistics trends for B2B companies and what challenges that introduces.
Sure, I'd be glad to. And this is really where the convergence, we picked it up is in, because it's not, even though anecdotally we might have understood that, we actually were able to see that in the logistics flows. So there's the direct to consumer, there's to and through a DC, depending on whether you're a manufacturer or distributor. And to give you an idea, that was maybe 80 to 90% of the shipments, and direct to a customer might have been 45. It was kind of a 2 to 1. And the interesting thing now is those are dead even.
Wow.
The number of shipments going direct to a customer and the number of shipments going to or through a DC are about dead even, which is
That's incredible.
That tells you that it's no longer one-off.
Right.
It's now it's a part of my business. Okay. There's also, shipping, through a vendor distribution center, bypass, 3PL, or even a fulfillment provider. There's also shipping through a break bulk facility direct to customer, to or through a DC. So the variety of these shipments impacts, B2B organizations, in several ways. Direct to customer shipments has an impact on shipment size, scale, and frequency of orders. Volatility and volume may increase as a result of more smaller orders. And then moving, from bulk shipments, which are basically case, pallet, or truckload, to individual shipments, has an impact on the frequency, cost, and, moving to any of these new logistics formats is a radical departure for B2B companies. Requires expanding systems, processes, and costs, both upstream and downstream, and across multi-party demand in order to fulfill activities. When we say multi-party demand, we're really looking at the channels, okay, when I say that. How is it shifting away? For example, it used to be B2B coming through a specific, B2B channel. Now that customer is shopping in other ways, and I may see them showing up in other segments. So being able to segment and look at those shifts in volume away from my traditional B2B is going to be critical. And picking up on when those things occur is going to be critical to whether I hang on to that business or whether I might lose it. Forecasting and planning must shift in scale and priority. Smaller orders tracked through these new logistics flows require integration and tracking. Proper forecasting requires more B2C levels of customer engagement and integration. Again, it's understanding where that demand is shifting to, and can I pick it up? So the segmentation capability, both at the inventory level and I'd say at the customer level and at the forecasting level, going to become more and more essential. In other words, it's no longer I can just have one forecast, one size fits all, and I just build, to the mountain, okay? Right. I have to actually know where that demand is going and really segment that well. And the demand fulfillment process must be able to incorporate disruptive changes caused by the B2C volume, as I just discussed, okay? The planning decisions around allocation and service level will increase, along with the need to know the most profitable option for fulfillment. So think in terms of I get that order, now I know how to ship it, okay? But what if it's coming from some place I've never really shipped to, coming from some origin I don't know about, haven't gotten before, and I have to ship to some place I've never shipped to? How do I capture that and make that decision on the fly? I have to have that information now to know whether or not to take that order. Many companies have a number plugged in, okay? That doesn't mean the number's right.
Right.
Okay, so they could be losing money and not realizing, and that's kind of the point. So having that information quickly and in a timely manner is just going to be essential as I handle these B2C flows. Beyond the planning and physical shipment requirements, the speed and process integration to handle the direct-to-customer business will require closed-loop integration from planning to execution. as well as an end-to-end view across the demand to fulfillment process. So I've got to know when I get that order, which I didn't traditionally have to know, because it's just a fulfillment, maybe to a DC. But now I really have to capture that order, track that order through fulfillment, give status on that order at all the points. As a consumer, all of us want to know where our package is, right? Well, think about the B2B companies that never had to do that, okay? Now they have to.
Right.
So that's sort of the implication of what you're dealing with when you're talking to a B2B company, trying to manage all these B2C flows.
Absolutely. And really the technologies behind all of this, the technologies to improve automation, demand management, collaboration, inventory allocation, certainly play a really key role here. We'll revisit this more in detail later in a future segment. Now, let's discuss the second leg of the stool, supporting a B2B company's own e-commerce business. B2B customers want a B2C-like experience when shopping online, but there's so much more that must be in place to support this. For example, while a consumer often makes a purchase decision alone, a B2B buying process often involves multiple roles, such as purchasing, accounting, finance, and legal. This often involves multiple levels of approvals and workflows. B2B companies must identify the roles and authorities of B2B buyers, what their workflow approvals are, and which projects or contracts they're involved with. B2B customer relationship may also involve custom pricing, volume discounts, and special shipping arrangements for that customer. And there's also often a layer of account managers or sales representatives involved in the B2B customer relationship, which also involves sales commissions that must be calculated. So all of this needs to be taken into consideration. It involves an extensive amount of processes and systems. Bryan, what must B2B companies do differently to support this model from an inventory, order management, and fulfillment perspective?
Sure, and you highlighted on all the implications and all those processes that it touches. They now have to merge or consolidate the orchestration of inventory deployment and processes to meet smaller, more frequent, and articulated orders. They must also support new logistics formats such as drop ship and customer direct delivery. The trend towards same-day delivery will drive further execution requirements, and they'll need to plan ahead to incorporate that capability. And to your point, the approval levels add time. And the one thing when you're dealing with e-commerce is recognizing, speed is the factor here. So adding or streamlining all those processes, in fact, even eliminating some, okay, may be required to really satisfy the e-commerce part of it. From an operations perspective, picking and packing now moves from a bulk shipment to a small unit shipment. The size or dollar amount of the order drops while the cost of processing the order is likely to increase to fulfill, on the total fulfilled to deliver cost. Robust order management system can play a key role here in being able to manage all these pieces and also having the status of the order. It used to be the order was placed and then it was, is it shipped? Now I need to know it's placed, it's in picking, it's in packing.
Right.
It's on the truck, it's where on the truck. I have to provide status in, maybe 15 different buckets worth of time and shipment, which I didn't used to have to do. So an order management system that's robust enough to capture all those things and provide status at many different levels is the type of thing that, you have to consider. I'm not saying that's true in all cases, but certainly in some. So that's an example of something that's immediately impacted. If there's multiple locations involved, profitability must factor into where the order is routed for fulfillment. It might require splitting the order up across, multiple sites for fulfillment. So think in terms of if I have an operation and I do get an order, and it could be, think in terms of fashion. There's shoes over here and a dress over there and coming from different operations. How do I make that merge in transit?
Right.
And do that overnight, okay? And do that cost effectively, okay? Those are the kinds of things that, and that's maybe more B2C, but still it's you get the idea is how do I break an order apart, distribute that order and bring it back together, track it, trace it, and then know that I've made money doing it. That's the point. An order management system with algorithms in place to consider that aggregated profitability, based on fulfillment costs is critical. So for many B2B companies, it may be necessary to implement a distributed order management system to handle that if they don't already have one, or have one that deals with some of these, refinements that are going to be required. Once I have that ordering system in place, then it's going to involve the multi-site and multi-party inventory visibility. I have to know where the product is before I can commit to the shipment. So, now flip it around from the order side to now I have to address it and and execute on that. So I've got to have that visibility across, operations at the time of the order placement, as well as the associated fulfillment cost for all those options. And again, that's on the operations side. I want to know the cost of the shipping end of it, but I also need to know the cost of, can I execute, in every phase of my operation to meet some of those costs or delivery times that, that order management requires. So.
Right. It's just astounding, all the steps involved in the process. And so as we think about how quickly we expect orders to get here, all the steps that have to happen along the way, and how inventory can be basically transitioned on the fly to be able to ship to a particular customer that's in a higher priority segment. It's fascinating. It really underscores the need for really powerful order orchestration capabilities, but also integration across e-commerce and enterprise systems. The need for ensuring that back-end systems such as ERP, order management, are integrated with the more customer-focused applications like e-commerce and CRM, it's just really essential to making all of this work. In fact, one of your associates at Aberdeen Group, his report indicated that companies that integrate their back-end e-commerce activities enjoy a 90% greater year-over-year increase in annual company revenue, compared to all others being around 7 to 14%.
No, that's extremely high.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And just on top of that, a significantly higher customer retention rate, higher customer satisfaction, and of course on-time order fulfillment that feeds into that. So in the similar report, the best-in-class have higher visitor conversion rates on their website, improvement in shopping cart abandonment, improvement in time to market, and a higher in visitor engagement rate.
Sure.
So all these things working behind the scenes, it doesn't seem so obvious when we think through the integration and order management plays such a key role. So this significant difference in performance is really enabled by the ability to better engage customers with consistent and personalized information and leverage the data to maximize the customer's potential to purchase. On the other hand, a lack of integration leads to delivering inconsistent and impersonal messages to business buyers, or not getting the right product information in front of them. So again, integrating e-commerce and order management with back-end systems can drive more revenue while reducing costs, greatly impacting the success of B2B organizations. So now let's move on to the third leg of the stool, which is supporting the customer's e-commerce business. For some B2B companies, this means that they're supporting both B2B and B2C sales. Not only are these companies processing their own orders, but they're also processing on behalf of their selling partners. So this is exceedingly complex. Brian, what's required to support this?
Sure, and I would say you hit on the nail on the head, I should say. It's getting very complex. And even the nature of the kind of communications, responding in a B2B nature, I know at least who those customers are. When I'm dealing with the consumer, I really may not know who's on the other end, okay? I've got experience with the B2B guys, so the kind of communication I'm much more familiar with, even at the e-commerce level. But when I'm dealing with the consumer, now I literally am blind if I'm supporting them in many cases to knowing them. So there's just an upfront, okay, now I've got some real wild cards out there that I'm not used to dealing with if I'm a B2B company, okay? So that's maybe a kind of a going-in thought as we talk through some of that. So they've got to have an end-to-end joint solution, network visibility, and close linkages to order management system for near real-time orders and updates. They need a single integrated system sharing the same data schemas to ensure accreditation for real-time activities. They've got to extend catalog and order processes to external partners such as drop shippers and integrate them to the fulfillment and delivery capabilities already in place. So all these, as you mentioned, all these steps have to be tied together, and they've got to be orchestrated, okay? They've got to be in sync. That's the other thing. I can't get the cart before the horse. I can't be putting the catalog up there if I don't know the cost, as an example. So that type of problem that, okay, I'm not used to running, a consumer operation. So as a B2B company, I've got to get those, even the fundamentals down of, what's the sequence of steps that I've got to put in place.
Sure.
Another facet of supporting customers, e-commerce businesses distributed orders. It's these orders that have to merge in transit, as I mentioned, even for the B2B e-commerce. It could even be more radical when it comes to the consumers. I mentioned dress and shoes as an example, but think in terms of an entire outfit or Let's say I've got, a hard goods project where I might need multiple pieces of equipment, and I've got to assemble that, on a site, for example. I want to run my project on a Saturday. I've got to have everything show up on time. So I could be coming from multiple plants, multiple DCs. I've got to orchestrate that order. Again, I have to know the pricing of it. What's the most advantageous and profitable ship point? Can I get it there on time? I can't just look at profitability. I may have to consider delivery first and then profitability. But I have to make those decisions. I have to have all those algorithms in place, ready to go, so I can pick it, pack it today, have it there tomorrow. Okay, those are the kinds of things that the end customer is expecting. So the pressure it puts on, a B2B company that just doesn't have even those processes in place, let alone some of the visibility and systems to see all those things.
Right.
Okay, that's where the pain's going to be. Okay, it's easy to see I'm shipping one thing, but now what comes with that shipping one thing? What's the implication of that when it comes to communicating back to that customer? So here the level of integration and connectivity to logistics partners becomes paramount. There are many systems, players, and processes involved. In other words, I've got to know the status as it ships, back to the multiple points and states, so I have to have that order management system tied into logistics partners. Logistics partners have to know they've got to give me timely updates as to when conditions change or routes change or timing changes. Because of the forecasting, planning, and inventory visibility required to support this, end-to-end visibility and internal process integration is a must-have. I can't wait for the handoff. I've got to, in other words, it really has to be integrated. I've got to take that latency out of the process so that I can do things in a day, make decisions within a day, and execute within a day. Inventory, such as drop shipments to stores, must be constantly monitored to identify the timing and volume ships between the three segments. All of this requires re-engineering across many technologies and processes, many of which I touched on. And again, it depends on where the biggest pain point is and, for a given company. And it could be it's in the picking and packing, it could be in the shipment, it could be in the communication, it could be in the costing. Don't know. But recognize you need to review all those when you're considering this. And that's the key, is understanding what the flow does to you, and then realizing where that pain point is.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of steps that a company must take to address this, and a lot of best practices that can be applied along the way. We're going to explore this in greater detail in our next segment.